Alright, it's time for another episode of Random Thoughts from McRae's Mind, the worst video channel on YouTube. And today, I'm going to be talking about why taxes are the best way to fix inflation. So, today, in the world, we have this massive problem with inflation. Everybody's trying to get inflation under control, and the Federal Reserve and the central banks are using interest rates to do that. So one of the things that they're trying to do in this process is to get asset prices down, because we have these gigantic asset bubbles, and they have created this massive amount of inflation as people have all this money to spend based off the fact that their stock market portfolios have gone way up and their Bitcoin and everything else. And so it's created this kind of dysfunctional economy. And then we have the supply chain problems, and all this has come together to create this enormous problem. Now, the problem with this idea is that most of our inflation is coming from asset prices, but by raising the interest rates, they're going to destroy jobs. So, our inflation is not job driven. It's not through wages, as has been the case in the past. So they're basically taking a hammer to the economy so that they can knock down all these asset prices that they've artificially inflated as a way of producing growth, because there's no growth really in the economy otherwise. So it's the wrong way to go about it. So what's the right way to go about this problem, and why is it not being pursued? Well, you have this problem of gigantic asset inflation through the Federal Reserve's policy of pumping up the asset markets in order to create growth. And so they basically kind of blew things up in that process. Everything got totally out of whack. And now the wealthy have way too much money. They're spending way too much money. Even the middle class, the housing bubbles, the stock market bubbles, they've had all this kind of artificial money pumped into their accounts. And they're feeling their oats. They're going out and spending money because they've got a lot of money to spend. Well, the way that you would really attack this problem, if you were a rational person, is that you would just tax the wealth, right? You just tax it away. That's what really needs to be done. We've created this world where we have today, where we prefer stock market assets, we prefer financial assets, because the wealthy prefer those things. They like to be taxed. They prefer not to be taxed at all on those assets if they can, but we've got it down to 15% taxation rate, right? If you were to make stock market gains to be taxed at ordinary income, 39% for the wealthy, like, stock market would come down substantially. That would solve a lot of your problems. Asset prices assets would not be as valuable anymore. You would not have this preferred tax treatment. So that would drive down the market, and it wouldn't affect jobs as much. Because we have a pretty well-functioning economy. We don't nearly need to destroy the economy. All we really need to do is get control of asset prices. Stop having this kind of preference for financial assets in our society, in the structure of our society. That's not the way to go about building a productive society, by just favoring certain classes of people. So why is that not being pursued? Well, obviously the wealthy don't want their taxes raised. They prefer to destroy jobs instead, because that's not going to affect them nearly as much. That's going to increase their power, not reduce their power. So we could increase taxes on ordinary income. Specifically, we could increase taxes substantially on capital gains taxes. More importantly, we could introduce what they call a Tobin tax on financial transactions, tax every transaction, get away from all of this rampant speculation. people had to pay a small tax on every transaction like a commission, they'd be less likely to pursue all these idiotic speculative transactions that are driving up asset prices. So David Harvey, who is a Marxist economist, so to speak, just did a really good video on how democracy is being replaced by basically monetary interest, and that governments literally cannot function anymore, that they have to be ruled by the capital class now. And that's what you're seeing now with inflation. That's exactly what's happening. You know, if you watch that David Harvey video, he talks about how governments simply do not have any ability to do anything effective for their populations because they have to answer to the wealthy. And that's the problem we have in the United States. What the Federal Reserve is doing is trying to do what Congress should do. Congress should be attacking this inflation problem, but they can't do anything about it, and they don't want to do anything about it because they're day trading stocks. They're making all kinds of money, and they don't want to solve this problem because ultimately it's not a problem for them. They like the way things are, and the people that are putting them in office like the way things are, and so they're not going to do anything about it. And so the Federal Reserve is the one that's left holding the bag, right? They're the ones that have to do something. They have to try to do something, and so something is to raise interest rates to a higher degree to try to get asset prices down, instead of Congress just saying, hey, look, we're just going to tax this wealth away, or, you know, have a one-time tax, right? You could have a one-time tax of 50% of all asset gains. That would get rid of your inflation for sure. Now, people wouldn't like it. That would be pretty radical, obviously. Even most people wouldn't like that, but it would work. That would get rid of your inflation. But those are the kinds of solutions that are not going to be pursued, and they're not going to be pursued because nobody wants to really solve the problem. People are happy with the way things are. People prefer the inflation, especially people in power. They're not really upset about inflation because they're mostly benefiting from the higher asset prices. And so the Federal Reserve is trying to do what it can do because basically Congress has turned over the functioning of the government to the Federal Reserve. Right? They believe in what the Federal Reserve is doing. They believe that the Federal Reserve has these magical powers, that they can just wave a magic wand, raise interest rates, and fix all the problems that we have that the wealthy don't want to address. So that's why raising taxes is really the best way to combat inflation, and why inflation is going to stick around, because we're not willing to do the things we need to do to combat inflation. There's really no interest whatsoever in doing that. What they want to do is they want to kill jobs. They want to destroy the economy to the extent that they can, and then they'll just have the Federal Reserve pump up asset prices again and save their bacon if it needs saved. So that's another video from Random Thoughts from a Crazed Mind, the worst video channel on YouTube. Thanks for watching, YouTube.